Welcome back to another episode of Out of Bounds. This is episode 14, and today we're going to be talking about drug testing. Welcome back to another episode. Like I said, this is episode 14. 14? I'm your host, Danell Leyva. Welcome back to another episode of oh my God, you know what? Let me just do this all over again. Welcome back to another episode of Out of Bounds. I'm your host, Danell Leyva. I remembered to get water today. That was the smallest sip. Okay. Today we're talking about drug testing. Here's the thing. I was planning on having a guest on this week, but unfortunately, life happens. And sometimes things don't work out the way that you expect them to. So you gotta adapt. You gotta keep going. Like I say in my Airbnb experiences. That's not what I say at all. I say you gotta adapt, you gotta persevere. We got Kiki here. She can be a guest. I don't know. Anyways, like I said, today we're talking about drug testing and the USADA, which is the United States Anti-Doping Agency, as well as the WADA, which is the World Anti-Doping Agency, better known as USADA and WADA. My experience with USADA was very interesting because I learned about them at a relatively young age. I think I started getting tested right around the time that I became a senior national team member, which was when I was around 17. Actually, no, I think I started getting tested when I was around 19. I think that's when things really started to kick in for me personally. So USADA, they would come to the national team training camps. It was like a full hour at least, and everybody hated it. We all hated it because it was just, first of all, we all knew everything already. We were very aware. They would rarely ever change things. Sometimes they would just be like, oh, this time there's a new thing, and then sometimes not even. It was weird because it was almost like scare tactics for a lot of us. You know what I mean? And for me especially, it was actually, they were one of the main reasons why I never took any supplements at all while I was training. I was scared to take Advil. I was scared to take anything, even if I was dying, only at a point where it was absolutely necessary, that I really, really could not continue to train or anything without the use of some sort of anti-inflammatory. That was the only point that I would take it. Otherwise, I'd be like, I would always be so scared to test positive, because what they would say to us is that a lot of times, a lot of these supplements or even these over-the-counter pills, they are made in the same factory where something that might be on the prohibited list is also being made, and then there could be some cross-contamination, and that could come up in the test results, and then you could be banned. You could just not compete, or you can be stripped of a medal or whatever. So it was that was one of the main reasons why I never did that. And for me, it got to a point where I was literally tested every single month, sometimes twice in the same month. I remember one time I got tested early on in the month. Then we had national championships. I got tested at national championships. Then I got back home, and a week after that, I got tested again. And I was just I've never tested positive. I understand, but I've never tested positive. You've tested me 20 times, and I've yet to test positive. What's going on? It's the hair? It's probably the hair. It's the hair, right? I've had a beard since I was 17. I'm brown. What do you expect? But it's really interesting because then I had to deal, oh my God, it was so tedious, and it was a lot because we had to worry about filling out our whereabouts. Literally, we had to fill out calendars. It was on a quarter system, so every single quarter we had to fill out exactly where we were going to be, at least for an hour every single day for 3 months. Because if you weren't where you said you were going to be within the hour, it was an immediate failed test or missed test, and you were only allowed not a failed test, or a failed test, it would result in an immediate suspension or something like that. But a missed test, you were only allowed 3 No, you're only allowed like one. If you had two within 18 months or something like that, it was immediately considered obviously a missed test, and then they would ban you. After the second missed test, they would ban you, which was so terrifying because I actually had like a missed test, and then I almost had a second one. There was certain times where I literally had to update my whereabouts, because that's the other thing. Sometimes you just like, you think that you know where you're going to be within like the next 3 months, but then sometimes you just don't, and then you just forget. Or I would like put the times wrong or something like that. And it was just so stressful, dude. I remember being called. They would give you an hour. If they would show up wherever you said you were going to be in that 60-minute time slot, I think they weren't allowed to call you, but they were allowed to tell somebody else to call you to notify you. I remember being called one time. I was in New York, and I guess I had forgotten to update it. And they called me, and they were like, "Hey, man, I'm here at the gym." And I was like, "Huh?" And they're like, "Yeah." And I was like, I'm not there." And he's like, No, I know. "Do you think you can get here in about an hour?" And I was like, "Not exactly." I was like, "I'm in New York." And they were like, "Oh, okay. I see." It was It was so bad. And then obviously you always have the awkward moment of having the person in the bathroom with you. The person that was, because it was always the same person here in Miami, because it's, they have like certain people in different areas, and it was always like the same person here. And whenever I would see them, I'd be like, "Yo, what's up, man?" Again. And they'd be like, "Yeah, sorry." But they were really good about it, because the way that you have to like drop your pants or whatever down to like below your knees, and then you have to lift your shirt above your like belly button, and they have to, like, some people apparently would just like stare the whole time. That person that did it for me, they would just check and be like, "Okay," and then they would let me do my thing. There was a few moments where I really needed to use the bathroom in a different way. I really needed to take a number 2, and I was just like, "I'm sorry, I'm trying to clench and also push at the same time. You can't do both." I'm sorry, this is a disgusting topic, but it's hilarious, because that's the kind of shit that we had to deal with. But it's so bad. But that's just another element that we add to our everyday life that people don't really think about or realize sometimes. You know what I mean? It's funny because, you would get this like little kit, and you would have to open it a very specific way. First you would have to go to the bathroom. You would have to wash your hands. You can't use soap. Can't really dry your hands. You just kind of had to go like this. And then you technically can't really touch yourself. Like you can't really, as a person who has male genitalia, it's probably definitely easier because you kind of just stand there. I wonder how difficult it was for anybody who didn't have male genitalia, because uncomfortable. This whole conversation is uncomfortable, and I love it. Here's the thing. Funny enough, a lot of people, they would just drink a bunch of water. Drink a bunch of water and you'll be fine. You can't, because if you drink too much water, it's too diluted, which means that the test wouldn't work. And I can't tell you how many times I would literally be walking out of the bathroom as the person would be walking in, and I'd just be like, are you kidding me? And then unfortunately, this person has to literally they just have to wait around the whole time. This person stayed in the gym watching me train I don't know how many times, because I would literally I had just gone, and I would have to, work up a desire to go to the bathroom a second time. And you have to fill it up a certain amount. If you don't fill it up that amount, then it doesn't count. It's only a partial, which means you have to go through the whole thing. You have to like pour it in one of the bottles, and then you seal it up, and then you put it away, and then you wait, and you got to go again. And then they have to you open everything back up and put it in and do the thing and close it up and make sure everything, don't spill it. If you spill it, first of all, disgusting, but also you got to do everything all the way over again. It got to a point where the person that was obviously going to the gym so many times, he wouldn't even really explain. You have to explain. It's like part of the job, and he would do the thing that it was like absolutely necessary for you to explain. But then so many times I would go, because I was tested so many times, I would go somewhere else, some sort of competition, and they would be testing me. And as they were trying to tell me, "Oh, and this is next," I would already be doing it. And they'd be like, "Oh, you you know what you're doing. And I was like, yep, I know exactly what I'm doing. It's fine. I'm just put it in his bag and seal it up, and here you go. Okay, I'm done. Can I leave? It was funny though, because a lot of times I would do it, and I would try not to drink water because, again, like, I was too scared to dilute it. And I would go, and it would be like neon yellow. It would be so dehydrated. And I was like, this is pretty bad. And he was like, that's probably kind of bad, but you should go drink water. And it was really interesting because you have to file, similar to all the whereabouts and providing exactly where you're going to be and stuff like that. And even like traveling and everything, you have to provide when you decide to retire, because you can't just be like, all right, I'm done, y'all, bye. You have to file it, and they have to, you have to notify them. Otherwise, they continue to test you, as they did to me after I retired in 2016. I had already moved to LA, and they came to test me. They came to test me one time, twice in the same week, because one of them was for the World Anti-Doping Agency and the other one was for the United States Anti-Doping Agency. And I was just like, and it was the same dude, and I was like, yo, what's going on? And he was like, I'm sorry, man, I'm sorry. I was like, dude. But it was so stressful. Honestly, it was so stressful because, like, sometimes you gotta do things, and they have no choice but to follow you. They literally have no choice but to just hang around with this massive bag filled with pee kits. They have no choice, and they have to bring multiple ones. They can't just bring one or two. They have to bring a lot, and they give you because they have to make sure that you can't say, oh, it was this person's fault. They brought me one that was contaminated or whatever. No, they give you options. They lay them out on the table, and they're like, pick, and you're like, okay, this one. And then from there, I can inspect it, make sure there's nothing there, make sure nothing was open, blah blah blah. But it's hilarious. Sometimes I had to go do something, and the person was just there with me, and they're like, what's up? And I was like, this is. Don't worry about it. And it was always really interesting because, to an extent, it feels like an invasion of privacy. But I understand why they take all those measures, because there really are some people that are really, really shitty, and they cheat, and they find any way to cheat, and it's upsetting because you have these people that they work so hard, and just because somebody else is cheating, they lose. But it's so interesting because at the same time, it absolutely altered my perception of just substances, any and every kind of substances, when I was a person in the real world. It made me view things as so taboo and so for such a long time. I didn't drink. Well, first of all, I decided that I wasn't going to drink until I was 21. I think I drank when I was 20 at some point, but I think I literally tried a beer when I was 20. So it doesn't even count. I didn't actually fully drink until probably a year later. And then I never even wanted to do that because I was always so scared that I was going to get tested positive for that. I never smoked weed or anything like that because, the whole time growing up, I thought a certain thing about it. And now at this point, I can't even take the smell. It bothers me, I associated so many bad things about it that it doesn't bother me when somebody else does it. The smell bothers me, but I don't view somebody else differently for doing it, obviously. I mean, fucking duh. But I would never do it because now literally it physically it makes me it gives me a headache. Too much of it literally makes me nauseous. Too much of the smell makes me nauseous. But it's so interesting because even after I had retired, I would hesitate to take some Advil, or I would hesitate to take any sort of over-the-counter medication or any supplements. Sometimes my mom would be like, take some vitamin C. And I'd be like, no, what? I had to retrain myself to be like, dude, what's going on? What are you doing? Take the thing. Your foot hurts? Take the thing. You're going to be fine. Nobody's going to be testing you anymore. I promise you, nobody's going to take your pee and go and put it in a lab anymore, ever again. Hopefully. And like I said, the thing with the alcohol, of course, I was like, oh, I'm training, I don't want to drink and whatever. Even after, when I retired, I was still kind of hesitant to drink. It was just kind of weird. And I also had a weird relationship with alcohol and the way I viewed it because of other things that happened. Now, I'm throw some back. No beers. I don't like beer. It makes me feel bloated. All of that was because of being tested and the scare tactics from all of the meetings that we used to have and the national team camps that we used to have, it was crazy. They would literally give us, it was a wallet list, and it was it would be folded up, and you would unfold it, and I'd be and you're just and the print was really small. That's all. Those were all the things that were on the prohibited list. And you're just like, what? And then, of course, you had like the therapeutic use exemption form that you had to submit. It's like things that people that actually needed. For example, Simone, I think, has to fill out a what's called a TUE, therapeutic use exemption, for ADHD medication, which she takes, which I wish I would have taken because it definitely would have helped. It's technically, to an extent, prohibited unless you can provide a legitimate reason behind it. And somebody like Simone, I promise you that I know her on a very personal level, it is very necessary for her to take it. Just like me. I actually have never tried it. I kind of want to try it. Still, to this day, I'm still like kind of hesitant because like, I don't know what's going to happen. Is somebody, what's going to happen? And so, yeah, that's why I've been a little hesitant to like go and get myself diagnosed for ADHD, which I absolutely know that I have 100% because my mom got me diagnosed when I was a kid and she was like, you got it. And I was like, great. But I've always been hesitant to actually take medication because of that, because of all the scare tactics that I had growing up, or not growing up, but in very formative years of my life and in my career, and of course, everything you need it, especially when it comes to any sort of substance use, you need to do it in moderation because it's very dangerous. It can be very dangerous. It's a very delicate balance. So you got to make sure that you do it responsibly, and of course in moderation, especially when it comes to like alcohol or something like that. You just got to make sure you do it in the right way, because it can end up being a very negative situation. But that's not what we're talking about. It's just really interesting, right? It's funny how even now, if it's something that I actually need, sometimes it's like Advil, like I'll wake up and my back will hurt because I have a bad back from gymnastics. I'll literally hesitate and be like, do I need it though? I'm like, yes, you need it. Take it. You'll be fine. And yeah, so I just feel like all of this whole situation with the drug testing and all this stuff, it's very interesting because it makes it, now more than ever, I've come to this point where I'm reflecting and I'm trying to see things in a different perspective. And of course, I used to see it as this kind of nuisance, right? But I also understood how important it was to have all athletes be tested, because you'll have these moments where, and by the way, I actually encourage any of you to tell me about an athlete that you had no idea had tested positive, and that maybe it changed your perception on how you viewed them, especially depending on what they tested positive for, because it is absolutely incredibly essential, and it kind of encapsulates the essence of sportsmanship. But then you have these random situations that are not random at all, but they're very specific. And here's the thing, like the situation that happened with the track athlete Caster Semenya, where she has naturally elevated levels of testosterone, and now they're expecting her to take estrogen and stuff like that. And it's, if you take testosterone, that's a prohibited substance. It's like one of the ones on the top of the list. You know what I mean? And I actually think the opposite for women as well. I'm not sure. I don't know. But I feel like that's still, to an extent, it's a little bit, it seems hypocritical, because you're expecting people to do the sport with their natural bodies and with their work ethic. And then when you have somebody who is literally doing that, now you're saying that that's not okay. It's a weird thought process and situation. And I think it's kind of, for me personally, I think it's kind of messed up. I encourage you, I love starting conversation. I love hearing feedback, and I love hearing other people's, mentality on the whole topic. So please, two things I want you to tell me about. I want you to tell me about which athlete or athletes did you find out had tested positive, how it altered your perception on them as people, especially depending on what they tested positive for, and then what your thoughts are on a situation like what happened with Caster. For me, it was interesting. I think we all are kind of well aware of what happened with Lance Armstrong, right? Like, he was like, everybody was like really like looking at him and being like almost as a beacon of perseverance, right? And then we found out that he was like taking steroids, and we were just like, dude, and of course, like I said in my last episode, there are always two sides to every story. But what was he taking it for? Was he scared? Was he scared that he wasn't going to perform to the expected rate or the expected level that the fans and people who were following him wanted to see? Was he just so caught up in his ego that he just decided to do whatever it took to be the best? It's weird. It's weird. I actually don't even fully know what happened because, I've never really researched it enough, but it's a weird situation. I know that there was a couple gymnasts that they tested positive for certain substances that, especially at the time, absolutely altered my perception of how I viewed them and how I saw them. Because of course, for certain of them, they were only testing positive for like weed. And at the time, it was like the devil's lettuce. It was the worst thing ever. So of course, like what? Whoa, he did that? Dude, probably just trying to chill. You know what I mean? Like for some people, I heard about like Yuri Van Gelder. Like, that dude tested positive for like cocaine while he was at competition. You're a lunatic, my guy. Like, you definitely made him stronger. You know what I mean? But at the same time, like, dude, you could have had a heart attack. You could have had a heart attack in the middle of doing a fucking cross. Like, was it worth it? Like, I'm curious. Like, do you think he was doing it to do the routine, or do you think he was just doing it because it was like, woo? That's some crazy shit for sure. I don't know. I'm glad I never tested positive, even by accident. But yeah, please. I mean, I heard something about they wanted to start testing student athletes also. I don't know I literally know nothing about it. I think I just like heard it in passing, and I don't know what that would be like at all. Things with like NCAA are always so weird. You know what I mean? Like that's a whole different animal that I've never even tackled or spoken about because I never did it. I never competed at NCAA, so I don't really have a personal experience with college gymnastics or just like being a student athlete. But I'm sure there's something iffy about it. Thank you again so much. I'm last episode I learned how to link the old episode, the last episode. And at the end of the video, I think it's here. I think I'm doing it here right now. But this has been episode 14. I'm your host, Danell Leyva. Thank you for sticking around. I'm out. I gotta go catch a flight. Deuces.